Order. I call upon the Right Honourable Prime Minister, le très honorable Premier Ministre.
Votre Excellence,
Your Excellency, Mr. President, Honourable Speaker of the Senate, Honourable Speaker of the House of Commons, Honourable colleagues, distinguished guests, dear friends.
honor and pleasure to welcome and introduce today a man I have come to know and to admire greatly since we both came to our respective offices in 2006, His Excellency Felipe Calderón, President of the United Mexican States. Le Président Calderón et moi avons participé.
President Calderón and I took part together at several summits, including those of G20 and APEC, as well as the Summit of the Americas and the Summit of North American Leaders. This is the second visit of the President to Canada. I also went on 2 occasions to his magnificent country.
President Calderón, as well as the First Lady of Mexico, former Congresswoman Margarita Zavala, who I'm delighted to report is also with us today. And I, of course, am very grateful, as we all are, that the President accepted our invitation to address the Parliament of Canada. Nous sommes chanceux d'accueillir.
We're very lucky to welcome a leader who has such a sense of politics, of legal affairs, and economy. A leader who shares our commitment to freedom, democracy, and justice. President Calderón has shown remarkable courage in his fight against the drug cartels which spread violence and misery throughout our hemisphere. He leads a country which we love, a neighboring country, a country which is a major trading partner for Canada.
16 years. The North American Free Trade Agreement has brought Mexico and Canada closer together than ever before. It has increased trade, travel, investment, and raised living standards for both of our peoples. Thousands of Canadian companies are now doing business in Mexico, and its glorious beaches provide warm and hospitable winter relief for tens of thousands of snowbirds. Educational and cultural exchanges are flourishing, and our seasonal agricultural workers program is widely recognized as a model for international labor mobility arrangements. We're working closely to combat drug trafficking and transnational organized crime, including through the Anti-Crime Capacity Building Program our government announced last year. And the Canada-Mexico partnership has fostered public and private sector cooperation across a wide range of economic sectors. Our governments also routinely cooperate on international issues as diverse as reform of international institutions, trade liberalization, and hemispheric security.
No relationship, no partnership is perfect. False requests for refugee status have affected our relation of friendship with certain countries, including Mexico. But as I said, this has nothing to do with the Mexican government. My dear colleagues, it's a problem in our system. And our 2 countries work together to correct the situation. Last month, we made very important progress towards a resolution by beginning a special program.
Principles that underpin free societies and successful economies. Canada and Mexico are as one. Here I'd like to quote President Calderón, speaking at the World Economic Forum in 2007, where he strongly defended our shared principles. Quote, Many countries in Latin America have chosen a move toward the past, he said, and among their most harmful decisions are seeking nationalizations, expropriations, state control of the economy, and authoritarianism. Mexicans have chosen a different, better way, the President said, and I quote again, "We have decided to look to the future and to strengthen democracy, markets, and investment." Colleagues, that is precisely the message that Canada has advocated throughout the Americas and around the world, especially during the economic turmoil of the past 2 years. Comme le Canada, le Mexique a été...
Like Canada, Mexico was hard hit by the global recession, and just like Canada, Mexico was caught up in this crisis, even though it was not responsible for it. In the years preceding the recession, we took the wise decision to reduce our debt, and that explains the fact that today we are not caught up in a spiral which has jeopardized the economy of several other countries. Canada and Mexico have both fought against protectionism, and our two countries have launched an appeal for a reinforced system of global financial regulation.
Mexico share these priorities and many more as we head into the G20 summit in Toronto next month. With a fragile global economy hanging in the balance, it is crucial that we build consensus at the summit on reform of the financial sector, control of sovereign debt, and the framework for strong, sustainable, and balanced economic growth over the long term. And so, Mr. Speaker, fellow parliamentarians, please join me in welcoming a great friend and partner of Canada, Señor Presidente.
Mr. President, welcome. Our house is your house.
On.
Thank you. Merci. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Excelentísimo señor.
The Right Honourable Stephen Harper, Prime Minister of Canada, Distinguished Madam Harper, Mr. Noel Kinsella, Speaker of the Senate, Mr. Peter Milliken, Speaker of the House of Commons, members of this honourable Parliament, dear friends, ladies and gentlemen. It's an honour for me to address this Parliament, an essential institution in a nation that has been able to make plurality its greatest strength. My visit reflects the high priority that our relationship with Canada, a country with which we are bound by a long history of friendship, has for the people of Mexico. Please allow me to highlight one fact that symbolizes the natural ties between our countries. Every year, at the start of winter, monarch butterflies depart southern Canada on a journey of 5,000 kilometers to my state of Michoacan in Mexico. There they spend the winter in the conifer forests, and they return to Canada when spring arrives. This fantastic journey spans the lives of several generations of butterflies which have their homes and their destinations in Mexico and Canada. The fact is that we have much in common, and Canadians and Mexicans share much more than belonging proudly to the same North American region. For decades, Mexico and Canada have been working under the same democratic principles, with a vocation of humanism and solidarity. We established diplomatic relations 66 years ago. That relationship of friendship and collaboration was strengthened 16 years ago through the North American Free Trade Agreement. Since then, the volume of our trade has grown more than fivefold, from slightly over $4 billion in 1993 to almost $22 billion in 2009. Today, there are close to 2,500 Canadian enterprises in Mexico. We have a long history of partnership and association. Today, we have many different cooperation mechanisms, such as the Canada-Mexico Partnership. However, in an increasingly global and interconnected world, I am convinced that Canadians and Mexicans must mutually avail ourselves of our advantages, of the advantages that we offer and plan and build a higher level of integration. Mexico is doing its part in promoting closer and better integration among countries in North America. Mexico is transforming itself into a modern nation, one that is safer, more competitive, more equitable, and more sustainable. One of the most important transformations is the effort to uphold the rule of law in Mexico. I firmly believe that progress and sustainable development, human development, can only be brought about in a country of laws. For that reason, we have deployed the full force of the state to meet the threat of organized crime and to guarantee anew the security of the entire population. This struggle, my friends,
Esta lucha
this struggle is neither exclusively nor chiefly intended to halt drug trafficking. The primordial goal is to ensure peace and tranquility for Mexican families and for those who visit or invest in our country. It's a struggle against criminal organizations, transnational organizations that, as in other parts of the world, seek to secure control over peoples and communities and directly affect the well-being of the citizenry. That is why combating those criminals with resolve and determination was an urgent task that could not be delayed. And as I explained to the Mexican people on the first day of my government, the struggle for public security is a battle that will take time, that will take money, and unfortunately, it will also require human lives. But it is a battle that must be undertaken. And as I said to them, that we, the people of Mexico, together are going to win. To put a halt to those criminals and their activities, we are not only meeting the criminals in combat, driving them back and seizing record amounts of weapons, illegal funds, and drugs that threaten the youth and the young people of the entire hemisphere, but fundamentally, we are also rebuilding our law enforcement agencies, our justice administration, and our security forces, particularly at the federal level. Since the start of my administration, we have trebled the budget allocated to the federal police, and we have increased its officer numbers. We are recruiting young, honest, upright women and men who are better trained, better paid, and better equipped. I would like to thank Canada for the cooperation and assistance it has provided through the Royal Canadian Mounted Police in this struggle for the security of Mexico and of our entire region. In addition, we are transforming our judicial system into one that uses open, oral trials, which will make it more transparent and more efficient. In combating organized crime, we are also protecting human rights. which face the greatest threat. It is the criminal groups that, through violence, undermine the freedoms of the Mexican people. Today, Mexico has consolidated itself as a full democracy with a system of strong parties and an active and plural political life. Above and beyond their differences, our parties have agreed on electoral reforms that seek to strengthen our democracy. The legislative branch is currently studying an initiative for political reform that will give citizens greater power and ensure that the mandate they confer is translated into public policies that benefit them. At the same time, we are transforming our economy to make it more competitive and to increase its capacity to create jobs. Toward that goal, we have undertaken a series of structural reforms that had been neglected for decades in Mexico. A reform of the pension system that will safeguard the retirement of civil servants and yield public finance savings equal to 30 points of GDP at net present value. A tax reform that reduced the public deficit and our dependence on oil income. A reform of energy policy that enables Pemex, the state-owned oil company, the possibility of entering into flexible contracts with the world's leading specialized companies. With this, Pemex will have access to cutting-edge technology, greater investment flows, and above all, increased operating capacity. Through this, we are helping to ensure the energy independence of Mexico and of the region. In addition, we have raised our investment in infrastructure from 3 to 5 percentage points of GDP every year in order to build the roads, the ports, airports, and power plants, the facilities for telecommunications that we need so as to become modern. This is the largest infrastructure investment in decades, and it will make Mexico a privileged logistical platform for trade and investment in the global economy. These projects, my friends, make Mexico a stronger, more modern, and more competitive country, an important focus for investment, and a strategic partner for Canada. All these reforms and actions are preparing us for a better future, and at the same time, they're enabling us to overcome the terrible economic crisis that Mexico, along with other nations, experienced last year. In 2009, Mexico was confronted by a perfect storm. Our economy suffered its worst contraction in modern times. At the same time, we faced an unprecedented public health contingency with the emergence of the new strain of the human influenza virus, H1N1. We suffered the second worst drought in 70 years and the largest drop in oil output in our history. Today, one by one, we are overcoming those challenges, any of which would have derailed a weaker country than Mexico.
Afrontar estos hechos nos permitió.
Addressing those developments enabled us once again to corroborate our great strength as a nation. We are now beginning to reap the fruits of our efforts. The economy grew by 4.3% in the first quarter of this year, and similar growth is expected for the year as a whole, for all of 2010. Mexican exports are expanding at a rate of 40% yearly, and so far this year, 400,000 new jobs in net terms have been created. That is the highest number of jobs created over a 4-month period in the history of our country. At the same time, we are working to ensure equal opportunities for all Mexicans. To achieve that, we have trebled the budget of the Popular Insurance Program, which provides the country's poorest families with medical services. And we have also built or refitted more than 1,700 hospitals and clinics in the country, more than one per day over the past 3.5 years. This will enable us in 2012 to reach a target for which Canada has set the global standard: universal healthcare coverage. In other words, doctors, medicines, and treatment for everyone, every Mexican who may need them.
También promovemos
We are also promoting equality of opportunities through more and better education. More than 6 million children of all ages now receive federal government grants to ensure that they do not drop out of school for financial reasons. We have increased university coverage, and today almost 90,000 students graduate with engineering degrees or technical qualifications every single year. At the same time, we have stepped up our programs to fight poverty. With the Opportunities Program, which has served as an example to many developing nations, we have provided a direct source of income for more than 6 million of Mexico's poorest families, accounting for 1 out of every 4 Mexicans, provided that the parents take their children to school and to regular medical checkups. With this program, Mexico has succeeded in reducing its poor from 35 million people to 14 million people living in extreme poverty in only 10 years' time. And today, despite the crisis, we have increased the budget by 50% for the Opportunities Program. My government has also set itself the task of protecting the natural heritage of the Mexican people of today and of tomorrow, and that is why we have adopted an active policy for caring for the environment. For Mexico, Canada has been one of the planet's leaders in environmental protection. One of humanity's best experiences in dealing with a threat similar to that of climate change, the depletion of the ozone layer, one of the exemplar experiences of humanity in dealing with a threat similar to that of climate change, the depletion of the ozone layer, was the Montreal Protocol, which, under the leadership of Canada, is enabling us to successfully resolve that enormous challenge. Today, with humanity once again facing a severe, scientifically corroborated challenge, that of global warming, we need that same determination and that same Canadian leadership to help us all find safe ways to bring about a better shared future. On our part, Mexico was the first developing country to implement a national climate change strategy, and the first also to unilaterally establish specific targets for reducing emissions of greenhouse gases. In our view, tackling global warming is not a task solely for the developed nations, for one nation or any other. Not only developed nations, but all nations, under the principle of common but differentiated responsibilities. It is incumbent upon us all. We are promoting payment programs for environmental services for that reason, so as to preserve the country's forests, at the same time to benefit the poor indigenous and rural communities that live in the woods and rainforests. With this, we have learned that climate change can indeed be combated, and at the same time that poverty in our communities can be fought. At the end of this year, Mexico will host the 16th Conference of the States Parties to the United Nations Convention on Climate Change. My country is working to build consensus and to serve as a bridge between the economies of the developed countries and those of developing nations. As you can see, my friends, Mexico is a country in transformation. That makes us a more valuable neighbor and a strategic partner for the future of North America's prosperity. As I said previously, the world grows more globalized day by day and is divided into large, increasingly integrated economic regions. Some regions in Asia and the European Union have succeeded in combining their potential. I'm convinced that those regions that can maximize their comparative advantages will be assured of success in this age of unprecedented interconnections. Therein lies the importance of Canada and Mexico working together. We need more integration, not isolation nor protectionism, and we have agreed with Canada on that point in the G20 and other forums. Integration.
La integración.
Integration is key in restoring strong, sustained growth in North America. For that reason, our future, and in particular, our economic prosperity and that which we want, depend on strengthening our financial, labor, and commercial markets. Our economies are complementary, and they must work together to raise regional competitiveness and foster the economic growth of the region. That will translate into more jobs, increased wealth, and greater well-being for both Canadians and Mexicans. Ladies and gentlemen of the Parliament, dear friends, Canada has always been an example of how to create prosperity by encouraging the economic and cultural integration of migrants. On that topic, our countries also share common ground. Over its history, Mexico has also received asylum seekers and refugees from different parts of the world. My country recognizes the generous Canadian tradition of providing a refuge to those escaping persecution, discrimination, or widespread violence. However, I also know that there have been some who, abusing the generosity of the Canadian people, have perverted the noble aims of the asylum system to their own ends, which led the Canadian government to require visas for those traveling between our countries, visas that weren't required previously. The people of Mexico are good friends to Canada. Mexicans visit this great, beautiful country for many reasons, and that enriches our societies. Hundreds of thousands of tourists used to visit Canada every year, and those numbers have dropped by almost 40% over the past 12 months. We thoroughly respect Canada's right to make decisions regarding its immigration system. I cannot, however, fail to convey to you our regret at that series of incidents and those decisions.
Esperamos sinceramente.
We sincerely hope that the solution that this Parliament is studying through comprehensive amendments to the refugee law will also serve as a bridge that will enable us to renew the exchanges of our visitors. At the same time, I reiterate to you our full willingness to work with the Canadian government so that this temporary measure can be put behind us. Our complementarity also arises from our different demographic structures. Mexico's young, hard-working, and increasingly well-trained population contributes to the productivity and competitiveness of the agricultural sector and certain other areas of the Canadian economy. We have demonstrated this over the past 36 years with a temporary employment program that is an example for the world. First, Mexican workers contribute to Canada's economy. And second, the program assures their return to their country of origin, to their homes and their families. The program can be expanded if we are able to broaden our horizons and avail ourselves of the opportunities offered by our economic complementarity. Greater integration is what will make North America a more competitive economy, and we must redouble our efforts in that undertaking. I invite you to work with Mexico and alongside our common neighbor to forge closer economic ties and in consolidating North America as the world's most competitive and prosperous region of the world. Together, we can make that a reality.
Señoras y señores.
Ladies and gentlemen, the government of Mexico has every interest, full willingness, and an all-out commitment to work with the Canadian government and society on the topics of our common interest. Our peoples and governments, which love peace, freedom, and democracy, and work hard to bolstering a friendship that assures us a promising future, a future of unity and prosperity. Today, Mexico is undergoing deep changes. It is a stronger and more determined nation to meet the future head-on and take its proper place in the world. Let us continue to work together to strengthen our economic, educational, cultural, scientific, and technological exchanges, to strengthen tourism, security, and mutual understanding between Canadians and Mexicans. Let us continue to improve and cultivate our relations. We are partner countries, we are neighbors, but above all, we are friends. Long live Canada, long live Mexico. Thank you very much.
Mr. Speaker, Prime Minister, honorable senators and members of the House of Commons, Sa Excellencia Felipe Calderon, Mesdames et Messieurs. En nombre de todos los aquí reunidos,
On behalf of all those assembled here today, I would like to extend heartfelt thanks to you, Mr. President, for addressing our Parliament. Your thoughtful comments reflected and underscore the strong friendship between our two countries.
honorable members, this friendship is bolstered by a continuing dialogue and is enhanced by regular exchanges between Canada and Mexico. Mr. President, your visit today is one example, and it has been my pleasure to visit your country as well. It was a singular honor to be present at your inauguration in 2006. And last year, I had the honor to lead a parliamentary delegation to Mexico to discuss details of the forthcoming interparliamentary meetings. While there, I had the opportunity to visit La Heroica Escuela Naval Militar in Veracruz and to pay respect to the fallen Mexican heroes in the Hall of Honor. One of the many dynamic aspects of the bilateral relationship between our two countries is parliamentary cooperation. The very successful interparliamentary meetings permit Canadian and Mexican parliamentarians to engage in discussions on a range of issues concerning both of our countries. Monsieur le Président, le 16e
Mr. President, the 16th Interparliamentary Meeting was held in Canada this past November, and it was my honor to welcome the Mexican delegation not only to Ottawa, but also to my home province of New Brunswick. We shared perspectives on regional security, trade, investment, and the economy, the environment, and clean energy and international cooperation. Canada and Mexico also cooperate through multilateral parliamentary fora, such as the Interparliamentary Forum of the Americas and the Global Organization of Parliamentarians Against Corruption. Canadian delegates are looking forward to the discussions at the 7th plenary meeting of the Interparliamentary Forum of the Americas to be held in Mexico in November of this year. Your Excellency, the ties that have been forged between our nations are many and varied, and they are strengthened through regular dialogue. Mr. President, thank you once again for expressing your country's deep commitment to our bilateral relations and to our shared values. On behalf of all present today, I would like to congratulate you and wish you an enjoyable and productive visit to Canada.
President Calderon, Mrs. Zavala, Mr. Prime Minister, Mrs. Harper, Speaker Kinsella, honorable senators, honorable members, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, mesdames et messieurs. On behalf of all parliamentarians, I would like to thank you, Mr. President, for having addressed us here today. This chamber has welcomed many distinguished guests in the past, but as the leader of Mexico, one of Canada's closest allies and friends, you occupy not only a place of honor, but really a seat at the family table. Señora Presidenta,
Mr. President, this is your home.
Je n'ai pas le temps nécessaire pour réunir.
Now, I simply don't have the time to list all of the ties that link our two countries. There are just simply too many. Bilateral, regional, commercial, cultural, academic, just to name a few. Exchanges between our two countries increase on a daily basis, and our friendship is getting deeper.
such different histories, and yet Mexicans and Canadians now work together, play together, learn together, and build together. 200,000 Mexicans come to Canada every year, and we return the favor 5 times over, though strangely not at the same time of year. As Speaker of the House of Commons, I've been gratified to see the deepening parliamentary relations between Mexico and Canada. Indeed, in the more than 60 years since our two nations established diplomatic relations, the strength of those parliamentary bonds have only grown in intensity. For many years now, the annual interparliamentary meetings have been held between both Canada and Mexico, during which high-level parliamentary representatives, including the speakers from both countries, come together to discuss a number of issues of common concern and set out the mechanisms for closer collaboration in the future. I myself have had the pleasure of leading several of these delegations to Mexico and of hosting the meetings here in Ottawa, along with my colleague, the Speaker of the Senate. In recognition of this increased cooperation, 10 years ago, our embassy in Mexico created a Congressional Relations Unit in order to work more closely with the Mexican Congress and support intensified parliamentary cooperation between Canada and Mexico, yet another tie that binds our two nations. A few years ago, a Mexican friend told me that the first people to land on the shores of this nation hundreds of years ago were actually from Mexico. But they took a look at the white snow-covered lands, shook their heads and said, "Acá nada," which means over there, nothing. And so we were named Canada, and needless to say, I corrected his story. But, Monsieur le Président,
Mr. President, I know that you're from the magnificent city of Morelia in the state of Michoacán. That colonial city has been designated as a UNESCO World Heritage Site because of the beauty and the history of its buildings. In that, we share something, even in that area, Canada and Mexico. I hope that you'll have an opportunity during your visit to see the Rideau Canal, which is near here. It is the oldest system of canals still in operation in North America, and it links the city of Ottawa to the city of Kingston, the city where I was born and the one that I represent here.
Pleasure to welcome you in the House of Commons. Occasions such as this one are all too rare, and they are precious because they offer us, the people of Canada, the opportunity to hear from you about how our Mexican friends and neighbours are doing, the challenges they face, the strides they are making, the goals they've set for themselves and for their country, and the ways in which perhaps we can help each other. That's, after all, what friends are for. Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, Mr. President.